But you were just saying how many people were on that parade route, and listen, people were getting there at 4:30 a.m.
Yeah.
just to get a spot, and it was 30 deep in some places.
Yeah, and people were renting hotel rooms and getting there the day before, and like you said, being there the night before, the day before, or in the morning. But and I remember learning later about. I sent out an Instagram post about a guy that I found out in West Palm Beach who told his boss he needed to have off to go to the Super Bowl parade. He was from Philadelphia, yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
The boss told him, I can't give you off. And so this employee down there said, well, I'm going. And he was fired from his job.
Wow.
And when I posted out that story on Instagram, I was amazed by the amount of stories that came from people in not only different states, but different countries who kind of risked their job and told their bosses they were coming to Philadelphia no matter what for this parade, first Super Bowl parade. And the boss had the decision of, okay, you can decide whether I still work for you, but I'm going no matter what. And I was amazed by all of the stories. Some teachers who said, I can't miss this. There's going to be no classes that day in some other states where they were teaching because they're from Philadelphia. So it was amazing the impact that it had on our area. And I think that would be a great story someday of just getting all those people's stories together on video or whatever.
Absolutely.
People who missed classes, missed teaching, missed jobs that day to come into Philadelphia. People were connecting from Washington State, coming in 2 days before and having to leave that same day to go back to their job. So it was amazing how it brought everybody together.
And I'm kind of, thinking of the same thing of when Tiger won, coming back from an injury and winning the Tour Championship. And the Tour Championship, allowed more people in, ticket sales, and kind of remembering, where they were when Tiger came back, either winning the Tour Championship or winning the Masters. So, it's funny how a sports team for a city can just bring everybody together, even if they have differences, political, religious, all types of things, to just bring everybody together. I think that's why everybody loves sports.
You're so right. And that's the one thing that sports can do. I'm not going to mention other things that divide people or
Correct.
Sports
Absolutely
unites everybody in town.
Yeah. So let's go to, some individual players, because, you have great relationships, not only with the rookies, but with the veterans, the Hall of Famers. If you can talk about a free agency or a player, a high-level player that came into the city that created a lot of buzz that you just remember, either, when you first started up until now, kind of talk a little bit about that. And then some of the Hall of Famers that you've, been awarded to be in their presence and just kind of interview or get to know on a personal level. Some of the Hall of Famers that embody, Philadelphia sports.
Well, that's a good question. I have 3 free agents or trades where we acquired a player, and I will never forget the reaction. And the three to me are T.O., Cliff Lee, and Bryce Harper.
Absolutely.
It was just amazing when T.O., basically he was being traded to the Ravens.
Yeah.
No. I don't want to go to the Ravens. I want to go to Philadelphia, and I want to go to the Eagles. And ironically, he wanted to play with Donovan McNabb because they had talked about it at the Pro Bowl. But he basically said, I'm not going. And he pushed his way and forced his way to come to Philadelphia. And I remember being down the shore. I remember being different places, and everybody broke out into the T.O., 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 kind of like the soccer chant.
Absolutely.
And then Cliff Lee turned down more money from the Yankees to come to the Phillies.
Yeah, from Texas.
And then Bryce Harper, biggest contract in baseball history at the time. And I think a lot of people thought maybe he would stay on the West Coast. So those are the 3 that I remember where people just went completely nuts as far as when Philadelphia got one of the best players in the game at the time.
Yeah. And it's so funny that, obviously being from this area, I'm from South Jersey, you're from Delco, kind of, we get a bad rap around the country, how, either we threw snowballs at, Santa Claus and all types of stuff, but how when athletes come, especially high level athletes, how they love, the tri-state area, you have the shore, close to you have New York or DC, kind of in between those high market areas, even though I feel like Philadelphia is high market, and how much they love our family atmosphere, how kind of we're together, as a unit, from different areas where you're going to Wilmington to Philadelphia, South Jersey. So, I'm not really surprised, even though I live here, that more people want to come, even though we get a bad rap. So, but how about the Hall of Famers that you kind of, got a chance to talk to or been to their Hall of Fame speeches? If you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've thought about who would be the next Hall of Famer here in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be the next player to go in to a Hall of Fame? And I don't know who that is. Because after Brian Dawkins, Eric Lindros, maybe one of the Phillies from that great run, maybe.
Sure.
Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, Ryan Howard, maybe Cole Hamels. I don't know if any of them can get into the Hall of Fame. I don't know. But it's fascinating because we had a great stretch there of Brian Dawkins, Eric Lindros, Allen Iverson.
Yep.
We had T.O. for a year and a half or something.
A hot second, yeah.
A hot second. And you think about some of the Hall of Famers that we did have here in this town. And Roy Halladay, we didn't have him long enough, but his impact was profound.
Absolutely.
Playoff start, throws a no-hitter. Yeah, and the one thing that I noticed about these guys collectively, and I see some of the comments, Jason Peters, that's a good one. Jason Peters is
Claude. I saw Claude in there.
Yeah, Jason Peters is probably the next one. But the one thing I noticed about these guys, Roy Halladay would get to the ballpark at spring training at 4:30 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And was already in a full sweat. And in the middle of winter, he would be at Citizens Bank Park running through the outfield. There's just another level. Brian Dawkins, his passion and his heart to be the absolute best. You see these things and you can see why they're Hall of Famers. It's not always about like their specific talent. It's about work ethic and heart. And
absolutely,
kind of getting more out of yourself than maybe others would have. And I always wonder about Allen Iverson. If Allen Iverson was born into a body like Shaquille O'Neal,
sure,
would he have had the same like live or die mentality? One of the things that made AI great is growing up, he wasn't the biggest guy,
right,
and skinny.
Right.
Like he said, I'm all just bones, and
right. Right.
So I think you have guys with chips on their shoulder like Allen Iverson, which made him great as well. So I think it's been awesome, the stretch we have had of watching Hall of Famers, and for the most part, played most of their careers here.
Yeah, and listen, if he was Shaq size, he wouldn't be diving on the floor as much as he did. That's for sure. So, you talked a little about your history in the sports and all that stuff. If you could just boast a little bit about your accolades that you were, allowed to have and been nominated. Let's just say, on what you have achieved in your career, if you could a little bit.
Well, honestly, the biggest thing just for me that makes me happy the most is that I've been in Philadelphia, my hometown, for the last 18 years doing what I want to do, and that's sports broadcasting in Philadelphia and covering Philadelphia sports and telling Philadelphia sports stories. That's the biggest thing. I've won some awards and things like that, and that means a lot. But longevity in my hometown and still being here and still being able to do what I love to do, that's the most meaningful thing to me. I had some opportunities to possibly explore some other places and things like that, but Philadelphia really is my heart. And growing up here and watching Philadelphia sports and wanting to be a Philadelphia sports athlete, this is where I want to be with family and friends. And I honestly will tell you, I mean, you go to other sports markets and look, there are some places like Philadelphia. I think Boston is like Philadelphia. Pittsburgh is like Philadelphia. Green Bay is like Philadelphia. And there's some other places, Kansas City.
Yeah.
But you know, Philadelphia, unlike New York, LA, Chicago, and big cities like that, we're right behind them. But they have multiple teams
Right.
in their sports. Philadelphia is, I believe, the biggest and most passionate and undivided sports town in the country.
Yeah.
And, you know, I worked in West Palm Beach near Miami for a little bit. And during football season on a Sunday and it's nice out, they're on their boats.
Right. Right.
Fishing, and they're doing things outside. Philadelphia, it's cold in the winter. We need football.
Right.
And
right.
so there's nothing like Philadelphia to me. And just the work ethic and the pride that we have. And yeah, like if somebody cuts you off on a road, you might, somebody's going to give the middle finger.
Right. Right.
They're going to let you know. They're honest and upfront.
Right.
And I grew up in Delco, and that's the way it is. And I love that because there's no phoniness or pretense.
Yeah.
I wish we would dial it back a little bit on the booing. I remember when Ryan Howard, after winning MVP, was booed in the following April. And
Sure.
And there's some guys you're like, why are we booing this guy?
Sure.
I wish we'd dial that back a little bit, but I do think there's a lot of special guys who it made them a little bit better.
Sure.
And it created thick skin for them. I know of a couple athletes who hated being here and wanted to leave. And so, you know, they're not meant for a place like this. They should go play in Miami,
Right.
or LA, or Arizona,
San
Diego, or Tampa, you know, a place like that. You'll be fine there. But, you know, you don't have the church gathering that is Eagles Sunday anywhere else, really.
And I think it's tough because I know me personally and just, you know, watching the city and growing up that we expect so much, even though we weren't such a championship city. You know, you think we would win championships all the time and it came with the booze. Like, listen, we should be winning all the time. So I know that was difficult, but I think most people were just tired of losing or coming up short. So I agree with you. I think we need to limit that, but I do feel the pain of growing up and, you know, 4 straight NFC championships, you know, lost basically within the final quarter or half a quarter, you know, gets tough. So most people don't know your height. You know, I know you've been a baseball player. I'd be afraid of your forehand for sure, being how tall as you are. But can you talk about your favorite sport to cover and which sport do you like, you know, being in that locker room or just the players in that particular sport? What sport do you like to attend the most personally for you?
I would definitely say the Eagles in football because it's not every day. There's only 16 regular season games.
Sure.
It's a week and there's such a build up. Everybody's watching, you know, the game film and breaking down how they can beat the opponent and this and that. And I think the weekly build up is great. I think baseball, when I was growing up, it was fantastic. It was like the rhythm of your summer.
Sure.
But I think games are a little too long now. And I think there's too many. And I think if they would find a way to get the games to move a little faster and also not have as many, I think it would be a little bit better. But I think Eagles football for the build up and then the actual game.
Yep.
And then the post game where everybody is talking about a great win or complaining about a loss.
Sure.
It's great theater. And,
sure.
So that's why it's my favorite.
What would you implement as far as speeding the baseball games up? Because listen, it's like they're being out on the golf course, to be honest. You know, some baseball games are 2.5 to 3 hours long. And if you get a weather delay, you can forget about that. I mean, they might be out there for 6 hours. You know, I know, you know a lot about the game and the rules and things like that. What would you implement if you talk to commissioner of the MLB?
Well, I definitely think that they could have a timer in between pitches. I don't think a batter needs to step out of the batter's box.
Sure.
And I think the pitcher, whatever they want to decide, whether it's 10 seconds, whatever. You don't need to leave the mound. And I would bring down the mound visits, the amount.
Absolutely.
I know they have done that. But yeah, I mean, you don't need to have the batter getting out of the batter's box all the time and the pitcher stepping off the mound. So those would be the two biggest ones for me. I know they're going to do some things this year. They were with limiting relievers, and that a reliever has to get a certain number of outs. I think it's 3 outs or something like that. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I definitely think they need to implement in between pitches. That's the biggest thing to me, and just get the next batter up there.
Yeah,
get up there. Let's keep this going.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the current, sports teams right now. The Flyers were on an incredible run, obviously, before this unfortunate pandemic happened. Eagles, may have a great draft depending on who you ask. So what are you looking forward to when sports gets back into action?
Well, I mean, right now, the Flyers were having a fantastic season. And I think that they were really finding their way as a team, a perfect mix of younger guys, veterans.
Absolutely.
A great goalie.
Young goalie, great goalie.
They were championship contenders for the Stanley Cup.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, they've beaten all the best teams in hockey. So it's disappointing for the Flyers that this happened. And there's such a thing as mojo and momentum in sports, and especially hockey, because skating is a lot different for muscles than doing some of the other things you do in sports. And I think it's going to take some time for them to get going again and to be able to skate again.
Absolutely.
They're really not able to skate now. So it's to me that their season was interrupted. But I hope that they can find that magic again. As far as the Sixers are concerned, it's interesting because this team was always about the playoffs. And basically Al Horford is about the playoffs as well.
Right.
So Ben Simmons, they're expecting Ben to be back if the NBA season resumes. And Joel Embiid, I think he will not have as much wear and tear on his body this year.
Absolutely, yeah.
For the playoffs. And look, they are also a team that when they do play well together and decide to play, they have also beaten the top 8 teams in the NBA. Now, most of those games are at home, but they can beat anybody as well. So it's an interesting dynamic for the Sixers because they were a team built for the playoffs, and they go right to the playoffs. It'll be interesting. You can say that they have as good a shot as everybody if their players are healthy, and they need some more shooting, and hopefully Ben shoots a couple times.
A couple. Can you say that again?
A couple. That's how we're going to start this.
Okay. All right.
Jump shots.
All right.
And then the Phillies, I still think they need more pitching.
Yeah, they do.
And the Eagles, I like a lot of things they've done. I think the defensive line is going to get after it with a big push up the middle with Hargrave that they got to play next to Fletcher Cox and a healthy Malik Jackson with the ends that they have. And Darius Slay helps the whole secondary by being able to cover the other team's best receiver.
No question.
A lot of good things. I like the offensive line. I like the tight ends. We don't have any sure things at receiver with the health of the veterans.
And the height.
The young guys to step up.
Yeah.
But Carson Wentz showed a lot last year.
Absolutely.
What he did in the last 4 or 5 games with the young receivers and really becoming a great leader for them and evolving as a leader. So I'm most excited about right now the Flyers. And I would say the Flyers have a great shot if they can resume the NHL season, especially when you have the goaltending.
And coming from where they were, in January, kind of down on themselves and trying to claw back, and then being able to make that run was something special to see, for sure. All right, we'll get into some questions that we got from our Instagram. Do you play golf, and if so, where?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I really don't. I will eventually. I'm a little too amped up, and it's a little too slow for me.
Hey, John. Sorry, I know we don't have much time with you. I blame the rain over here.
It's all good. I got probably 5 more minutes.
Okay. Listen, we'll get you some lessons, some balls and tees, and we'll take care of you.
Let's do it. Right? Yeah. I want to learn.
So I got two last questions for you. What's the most difficult part about your job?
Right now or in general?
In general, let's say if it was normal, we got 3 sports going in October. What's the most difficult, traveling, family, trying to balance all that?
Yeah, I mean, when you get into this business, you do realize you're going to have to work some holidays.
Sure.
Eagles have played on Thanksgiving. The Eagles have played on Christmas.
Absolutely.
The Sixers played on Christmas this past year. And really, you have to be ready for things when breaking news happens. And things can happen on a moment's notice, like when Chip Kelly was fired 5 or 6 years ago.
Thank you.
And that was, we were all off. And then it's like, okay, everybody's got to head into the office.
Right.
And you're for a while and doing breaking news. So, when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, you're basically working for like a month straight without hardly any days off. And, you don't know when it's going to end. Like, okay, is it going to end at the NFC title game? No, they win. So
sure.
Now Minnesota for 10 days. So yeah, traveling, I'm not saying that's difficult, but
right.
Sometimes you just have to be ready on a moment's notice for breaking news and things that happen. And I would say right now, the most challenging thing is just the amount of media there is with social media and blogs and all kinds of things. You have to try to find a way to be creative and get different content because there's so much out there now. And like Instagram and Twitter, a lot of it is just being put out there for free. And so people used to stay up and watch the 11 o'clock news for the highlights and some interviews with the players and information.
And now you just
every second, right now. So that makes it challenging and kind of you're on call all the time. If something happens, it's going to be on Twitter, and you have to get an interview about it and react to it right away.
And sometimes it's tough. Listen, I know, being an anchor, you have to double check and triple check your sources. You can't go with the first source, especially if it's on social media. So I know you have those avenues, but yeah, it's definitely tough to keep with all that. Hopefully you got a team or a personal assistant over there to help you out.
I need one.
If you do read, what's the last book you've read?
Book. I'll be honest, I haven't read many books lately because just so busy with work and generally reading all kinds of articles and, research for sports. But I am going to read the Roy Halladay book that Todd Zalecki wrote.
Okay.
So I'm going to read that. I did read the book about Joe Paterno and everything that happened at Penn State. I was extremely sad with everything that happened there. So that's probably the last book that I read completely.
Okay. And my last question, listen, you're very young, so your career is far from over. But what do you think the next chapter for you is going to be after sports is done with for you? Do you have any hobbies or anything that you would like to accomplish in your life before you hang it up?
Well, I'd love to teach tennis or play tennis all day. Or run a tennis facility, or maybe a golf facility. But I haven't honestly thought about that. I really haven't. My goal is to be a Philadelphia sportscaster for as long as I can.
Absolutely.
Maybe someday I would love to, when I'm no longer on the news or I'm no longer invited to be on the news, maybe do some long form reporting or storytelling, kind of like The Last Dance kind of thing that's on now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that, or 30 for 30s, things like that, where you kind of become like a documentary type of production guy, or producing long feature things. So maybe something like that.
Man, that's great. Just want to thank you for your time. You've been a great host, great guest. We love watching you coming into our living rooms. We feel like we know you and being excited, not only about yourself and because I know you're a fan, but having us excited and being able to watch and things like that. So from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully we get sports back up soon. I mean, can you think about the link being empty and having the Eagles game? I mean, that's just so crazy to think about, but hopefully everything dies down and we get back to normal life again.
Let's hope so. Hope to see you and everybody soon, and we're all back out there doing the things we love.
Absolutely. Hey, John, thanks so much. You have a blessed day. Thanks for everybody who's tuning in, and John, we'll see you in the future.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
All right, see ya.
See ya.